I set my inspection badge down on Dylan Walsh's glass desk at 3:42 p.m. on a Friday. 24 years of keeping Skytech Aerospace's F9's 35 components within tolerance specifications, reduced to a piece of plastic with a photo that made me look like I hadn't slept in weeks. The magnetic strip reader beeped one last time as I walked past it. Almost sounded like it was mocking me. My name is Marcus Reed. I'm 49 years old, and until about 15 minutes ago, I was the guy who made sure titanium turbine blades didn't have stress fractures that could turn an $80 million fighter jet into scattered debris. Now I was unemployed, carrying a cardboard box with my digital calipers and a coffee mug that said precision is not optional. But here's the thing about being a quality inspector for nearly 2.5 decades. You develop habits like checking your phone for inspection schedules, even when you're walking to your truck with your career in a cardboard box. And there it was, flashing at me like a warning beacon, a reminder I'd set 3 months ago. FAA Surprise Quality Audit plus Air Force Safety Review, Monday 08/800 hours, dual certification required. I stopped walking. I looked at the date. Monday was in 3 days. I looked back at the building where Dylan was probably already celebrating his brilliant cost-cutting move, and Emma Rodriguez, his 27-year-old data analytics specialist, was setting up her machine learning algorithms in my office. The only problem was, I was the only person at Skytech Aerospace with dual FAA and Air Force certification to handle surprise quality audits. Without me, they were about to find out what happens when you try to replace 24 years of metallurgical expertise with a Stanford graduate who thinks stress analysis means checking her Twitter notifications. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. Because this story starts with a quality inspector who learned the hard way that not everything that needs checking can be measured by an algorithm. 24 years in aerospace quality control teaches you things like how to spot microfractures in turbine blades before they propagate, like how to stay calm when you're holding a component that could kill a pilot if you miss something, and like how to know when someone's about to make a mistake that'll cost them everything. I did 8 years maintaining F-16 seconds for the Air Force before I figured out I was better at finding problems on the ground than fixing them in the sky. The transition from military to civilian wasn't easy, but Skytech was different back then. They understood what military experience meant. They valued the discipline, the attention to detail, the understanding that when you're dealing with flight safety, there's no margin for error. When I started at Skytech in 1999, the company was still small enough that everyone knew everyone. The owner, Bill Martinez, was a former Navy pilot who'd built the company from his garage. He understood that quality wasn't just about meeting specifications, it was about bringing people home alive. Bill used to walk the production floor every morning, talking to the technicians, asking questions, making sure everyone understood what they were building. Those were good years. Sarah and I bought our house in 2005, a split-level ranch with enough room for Julie to have her own room and a workshop in the basement where I could tinker with old aircraft parts. Julie was 8 then, always asking questions about what I did at work. I'd show her the inspection tools, explain how you could feel stress patterns in metal with your fingertips, tell her stories about the planes her daddy helped keep safe. Sarah worked as a nurse at Houston Methodist, steady hours, good benefits. We were building something together. A life, a family, a future. Julie was smart as a whip, always reading, always curious. Even then, she talked about becoming a doctor. Said she wanted to help people the way Mommy and Daddy did, just in a different way. 3 months earlier, I was doing what I'd done every morning for 24 years at Skytech, walking the production floor, visual inspection, hands-on testing. You can't algorithm your way past a pair of experienced hands checking surface finish. And you can't machine learn your way around an inspector who knows the difference between acceptable tool marks and stress concentration points. Skytech had grown by then. Bill Martinez retired in 2018, sold the company to a private equity firm that promised to maintain the culture and values. That lasted about 6 months. Then came the consultants, the efficiency experts, the process improvement specialists. Each one had new ideas about how to streamline operations, reduce costs, optimize workflows. Skytech handled Air Force contracts now, F-35 flight control systems, avionics interfaces, stuff that kept our most advanced fighters in the air. My job was straightforward in concept, complex in execution. Make sure every component met military specifications, catch defects before they left the floor, ensure when the FAA and Air Force showed up for their inspections, everything was documented and traceable. I'd built my reputation on zero-tolerance failures. Not once in 24 years had a component I'd approved failed in service. The closest we'd come was 2 years ago when a new technician tried to rush a blade inspection. I caught a hairline crack he'd missed, scrapped the entire batch, and had him retrained within the hour. The Air Force commended our quality procedures in their annual review. The crack was barely visible, maybe 0.003 inches deep, running along the grain boundary near the root attachment. Most people would have missed it entirely. But when you've been doing this as long as I have, your hands develop a sensitivity that no machine can replicate. The surface texture feels different, almost imperceptibly rough, like running your finger over sandpaper that's one grit too coarse. That blade would have failed catastrophically within 200 flight hours. The crack would have propagated under cyclic loading spreading through the crystalline structure until the entire blade separated from the hub. At 30,000 feet, traveling at Mach 1.2, blade separation means engine failure, possible fire, and a very expensive emergency landing if the pilot was lucky. I explained this to the new technician, showed him what to feel for, how to recognize the warning signs. He was 23, fresh out of trade school, eager to learn. Reminded me of myself when I first started. All confidence and no experience. But he listened, took notes, asked good questions. By the end of the week, he could spot surface anomalies almost as well as someone with 10 years on the job. That's how quality control used to work. Knowledge passed down from experienced hands to willing students. Mentorship, apprenticeship, the gradual accumulation of expertise that couldn't be downloaded or programmed. It took time, patience, and respect for the craft. That was before Dylan Walsh bought the company. Dylan was 37 years old and had an MBA from Harvard. He looked at our quality setup like it was a horse-drawn carriage in a Tesla showroom. Everything was legacy processes and outdated methodologies. He wanted to revolutionize the inspection paradigm. He used the word paradigm frequently. I hate that word almost as much as I hate revolutionize. In my experience, when something gets revolutionized in a quality environment, people die. I'd seen it in the Air Force. Young officers fresh from the academy, full of new ideas about how to streamline maintenance procedures. Some of them learned, others created incidents that ended careers and sometimes lives. Dylan brought in Emma Rodriguez as a consultant 6 months after he took over. Emma was fresh out of Stanford's AI program, wore shoes that looked like they belonged in a space movie, and genuinely believed that machine learning could replace human judgment in defect detection. She'd never worked a day in manufacturing, never held a piece that someone's life depended on, never felt the weight of responsibility that comes with signing off on a component that might fail at 40,000 feet. Think about it, Marcus, Emma said during our first meeting, gesturing at my inspection station with its microscopes and surface roughness gauges. AI never gets tired. It never misses a detail. It can process thermal imaging, ultrasonic testing, and dimensional analysis simultaneously. It's like having 50 inspectors working around the clock. I was examining a turbine blade hub at the time, running my fingers along the attachment points, feeling for stress concentrations that showed up as subtle changes in surface texture. The metal talked to you if you knew how to listen. Grain boundaries felt different than smooth surfaces. Heat-affected zones had a particular roughness. Tool marks followed predictable patterns. But stress risers created irregularities that broke those patterns. AI never worked on F-16s either, I said, not looking up from the hub. It never had to explain to a pilot's wife why her husband didn't come home because someone missed a 0.002-inch crack. Emma laughed, actually laughed. That's exactly the kind of human bias we're trying to eliminate. Emotional baggage, outdated fear responses, conservative risk assessment. AI doesn't have those limitations. Human bias, emotional baggage, like 24 years of keeping pilots alive was just me being damaged goods. I looked up at her then. She was maybe 27, had probably never been in a real failure analysis meeting in her life. Never sat in a conference room while investigators tried to figure out why an engine came apart, why a good pilot was dead, why families were destroyed because someone somewhere made a mistake. Emma, I said, setting the hub down carefully. What happens when your algorithm misses something? She pulled up something on her tablet, swiping through data screens. That's the beauty of machine learning. Every false positive, every missed detection becomes training data. The system learns from its mistakes and becomes more accurate over time. That's not what I asked. What happens when it misses something critical? When a part fails in service because your algorithm said it was good? She looked confused. Well, we'd analyze the failure, update the parameters, improve the model. The part that failed killed someone, Emma. There's no update that brings them back. The room got quiet. Dylan shifted in his chair, probably realizing this wasn't going as smoothly as he'd hoped. Emma stared at her tablet, maybe understanding for the first time that this wasn't just about data and algorithms, but the moment passed. By the next week, she was back to talking about efficiency gains and cost reduction. Dylan was already planning how to present the cost savings to his investors. And I went back to my inspection station, knowing my days were numbered. The writing was on the wall, but I kept doing my job. Just last month, we had a stress test on a new batch of control actuators. The specs called for 125% load testing with dimensional verification afterward. Automated systems said everything checked out. Digital measurements were within tolerance. Computer models predicted service life well within acceptable parameters. But when I handled the parts afterward, something felt wrong. The mounting bosses, where the actuators attached to the airframe, felt different. Softer somehow, like the material was yielding under stress even though it measured correctly. I flagged the entire production run, triggered a material analysis, and discovered the titanium supplier had changed their heat treatment process without notification. The chemistry was right. The dimensions were perfect, but the grain structure was wrong. Under cyclic loading, those actuators would have failed within 500 flight hours. Catastrophic failure. No warning, just sudden structural collapse. The Air Force inspector called it exemplary quality control. The supplier had to recall 2,000 parts from 3 different contractors. Dylan called it a production delay that cost us 48 hours and disrupted the delivery schedule. "You're stopping production based on a feeling, Marcus," Dylan said during the debrief. Emma's system would have analyzed the material properties digitally and approved the parts based on objective measurements. "Emma's system would have killed pilots," I replied. "That's where you're wrong," Emma interjected, pulling up something on her tablet. "My algorithm processes microstructural imaging, stress modeling, and fatigue prediction. It's more accurate than tactile inspection by a factor of 15. "How many failures has your algorithm prevented?" I asked. "Well, we haven't had any failures since implementation, which proves it's working." That was Emma's logic. No failures meant the system was perfect. In my world, no failures meant you were doing your job right, but you never stopped watching for the one that would eventually come. "Emma," I said, "no failures means we caught the problems before they became failures. That's different than not having problems." She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Maybe I was. The language of experience, of hard-won knowledge, of understanding that comes from seeing things go wrong and remembering what it costs when they do. Sarah used to ask me why I took it so personally, why I couldn't just do my job and go home. How do you explain that when you've seen what happens when quality control fails? You can't unsee it. When you've been to the funerals, when you've met the families, when you've watched good people destroyed by preventable failures, you understand that this isn't just a job. It's a responsibility. Julie understood, though she was only 25 and had never worked in manufacturing. During her medical school training, she'd seen what happened when people cut corners, when protocols weren't followed, when experience was dismissed in favor of efficiency. "It's the same thing, Dad," she told me during one of our phone calls. "Whether it's an aircraft part or a patient, someone's life depends on getting it right." That was 6 weeks ago. This morning, the axe fell. Dylan called me into his office at 3:30. Emma was there, spinning in one of those expensive ergonomic chairs they bought for the conference room. She was wearing a hoodie that said Data Intuition across the front. I wondered if she understood the irony. "Marcus, have a seat," Dylan said, not looking at me. He was shuffling papers that I knew were meaningless. Classic power move. I sat. I didn't close the door behind me. Another power move, but in reverse. Let everyone hear what was about to happen. The quality landscape is evolving, Marcus. Defects are predictable now. Material science, stress analysis, failure prediction. We need solutions that scale with modern manufacturing challenges. Here it comes. "You see, that's the old paradigm," Emma said, not looking up from her tablet. "Tactile inspection is subjective. Everything valuable is data now. Material properties, dimensional measurements, surface analysis. You can't feel your way past statistical modeling." I stared at her. 27 years old, probably never been in a real failure analysis meeting in her life. Telling me about defects. "Emma," I said, "last month, you approved a batch of bearings that I rejected for surface roughness. Your algorithm said they were within specification. That was a learning opportunity, Emma said. The algorithm adjusts based on feedback loops. It's constantly improving its detection parameters. And when it misses something critical, when someone gets hurt, Dylan interrupted. That's exactly the kind of risk-averse thinking we're trying to move away from. Emma's system represents predictive quality control. Proactive, not reactive. Data-driven, not fear-based. Fear-based. Like 24 years of keeping people alive was just me being paranoid. The point is, Dylan continued, we're restructuring the quality division. We need fresh perspectives, someone who understands next-generation inspection technology. You're firing me, I said. It wasn't a question. We're repositioning you for new opportunities, Dylan corrected. Effective immediately. We'll honor your contract, of course. 2 weeks severance. Full benefits through the end of the month. 2 weeks. 24 years of keeping their aircraft components airworthy. I'd missed Julie's high school graduation because of an urgent inspection that turned out to prevent a component recall. I'd worked weekends, holidays, overtime shifts when critical parts needed verification. I'd given this company my prime years, the years when I could have been building something else somewhere else, and they were handing me 2 weeks' pay and showing me the door. The pressure built in my chest, but I kept it contained. When the system exceeds operational limits, you don't panic. You assess, you gather data, you make decisions based on specifications, not emotions. Understood, I said. Who handles the certification? Who's the point of contact for FAA inspections? Emma is taking over all quality functions, Dylan said, puffing up like he just solved aerospace manufacturing. I looked at Emma. Emma was trying to balance a pen on her finger while scrolling through her tablet. Does Emma have dual FAA and Air Force certification? Has she completed her AS9200 quality management training? I have a clean background, Emma said proudly, looking up from her pen balancing act. Never even got a parking ticket. My credit score is 823. We're fast-tracking the paperwork. Dylan waved his hand dismissively. It's just bureaucratic red tape. Emma has system access. She's been briefed on all our procedures. That's what matters in modern quality management. I stood there for exactly 5 seconds looking at them. I looked at the motivational poster on Dylan's wall that said, "Innovation never sleeps." I looked at the dead plant on his windowsill that nobody had maintained. I looked at Emma still trying to balance that pen, completely unaware of what she was about to inherit, and I realized something important. I didn't have to warn them. I wasn't required to explain that you can't fast-track FAA certification. It takes months, sometimes over a year. It involves federal investigators checking your work history, your training records, your understanding of regulatory compliance. They review every inspection you've ever performed, every decision you've made, every time you've caught a defect that could have caused a failure. The certification process includes written examinations, practical demonstrations, peer reviews, and continuous education requirements. You have to demonstrate knowledge of metallurgy, stress analysis, failure modes, statistical process control, and regulatory compliance. You have to show that you understand not just how to find defects, but why they occur, how they propagate, and what happens when they're missed. Without dual certification, you legally cannot be the point of contact for surprise quality audits. More importantly, if I warned them, they'd just blame me when it went sideways. They'd find a way to make it my fault, say I should have briefed Emma better, should have documented the procedures more clearly, should have transitioned my responsibilities more smoothly. I'd seen it happen to other guys who tried to save their companies from their own stupidity. Good intentions, bad outcomes. The company fails anyway, and the guy who tried to help gets blamed for not doing enough. All right, I said. I'll clear my station. I walked back to my inspection area. The production floor felt longer than usual, like walking through my own professional history. Jason Mills, my shift supervisor, looked at me with questions in his eyes, but I gave him a small shake of the head. Stay clear, Jason. Don't absorb the impact. He'd been with me for 12 years, came up through the ranks from floor technician to quality supervisor. Good instincts, solid training. He understood that quality wasn't just about following procedures. It was about thinking, questioning, never assuming that because something looked right, it was right. Jason had caught defects that automated systems missed, had prevented failures that could have grounded entire fleets. He understood the weight of responsibility that came with the job. Whatever happened Monday, I hoped it wouldn't damage his career. I started putting my professional life into the cardboard box. Photo of Sarah and Julie at Julie's medical school acceptance ceremony. She'd followed a different path than her old man, but she understood precision and attention to detail. The inspection loop that I'd carried since my Air Force days, the one that had been in my pocket during that F-16 incident in 2003 when a missed crack nearly killed a good pilot. The stress ball shaped like a turbine blade that Sarah gave me as a joke when I got this job. My tools went in next, digital calipers accurate to 0.0001 inches. Surface roughness gauge that could detect variations smaller than a human hair. Bore scope for internal inspections. Magnetic particle testing kit. Each tool represented years of experience. Thousands of inspections, countless defects caught before they became failures. And then I saw it. My computer was still logged in. Outlook was open. And right there, flashing in the corner like a system alarm, was the calendar reminder that would change everything. FAA, Surprise Quality Audit Plus Air Force Safety Review, Monday 0800 hours. Dual certification required. Contact M. Reed only. Today was Friday. The inspection was Monday morning. This wasn't just any inspection. This was a surprise dual audit of our quality protocols for the new F-35 actuator contract. The one worth $95 million. The one that kept the lights on and paid everyone's salary, including the 300 people who worked on the production floor, the engineers in R&D, and the administrative staff who had families to feed. I looked at the screen. I looked at the calendar event. I had confirmed this appointment 3 months ago, back when everything was normal, back when I thought I'd be here for another 15 years until retirement. Dylan wasn't copied because Dylan didn't have the clearance to know the specific timing of federal audits. Emma sure didn't either. The quality protocol was clear. Only the designated quality director with appropriate dual certification could receive surprise inspection teams. It wasn't a suggestion or a guideline. It was federal regulation. If the wrong person tried to interface with federal inspectors, it triggered automatic regulatory violations that could shut down the entire facility. I could forward this to Dylan. I could write a detailed email explaining that a team of FAA and Air Force officials would be arriving Monday morning expecting to meet with someone who had appropriate certification. I could save the company, save the jobs, save the contracts. I hovered my mouse over the forward button. Then I thought about 2 weeks severance. I thought about Emma's hoodie. I thought about human bias and emotional baggage and outdated fear responses. I thought about Dylan's dismissive wave when I mentioned the bearing surface roughness. I thought about 24 years of perfect quality control reduced to legacy thinking and paradigm shifts. I selected the calendar event. I hit forward. I typed in my personal email address. I hit send. Then I deleted the event from my work calendar. I emptied the deleted items folder. I cleared the cache. 24 years in aerospace quality control teaches you how to make documentation disappear properly. I picked up my box and walked out. Driving home at 4 p.m. on a Friday felt wrong. The afternoon light hit your windshield differently when you're unemployed. I stopped at the hardware store and bought a 6-pack of beer. Good beer. Not the cheap stuff I usually grabbed. If you're going to be unemployed, you might as well drink well. My phone buzzed. Text from Jason. Emma just asked me where we keep the inspection templates. She can't find the FAA compliance folder. This is insane. I stared at the message. The compliance folder, the keys to the regulatory kingdom, reduced to a lost file search. In the Air Force, that would have been a serious incident. In the civilian world, it was apparently modern quality management. I didn't reply. Replying would be interference. I was a civilian now, unemployed civilian with no responsibilities to SkyTech Aerospace or anyone in it. I got home to our split-level ranch, the house we bought 18 years ago when SkyTech was still a small company and the future looked stable. Sarah was in the kitchen making dinner. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans. Comfort food. Julie was at the table studying, probably pharmacology or anatomy. Kid was smart, smarter than her old man. She was in her 3rd year at Baylor Medical, wanted to be an emergency room doctor. You're home early, Sarah said. Then she saw the box in my hands. Her face changed, went through about 4 different emotions in the span of 3 seconds. She'd been through this before. Back when I first got out of the Air Force and couldn't find steady work for almost 8 months. I got laid off, I said. They're going in a different direction. Sarah set down her wooden spoon. She was quiet for a moment, processing. I could see her mind working, calculating mortgage payments, Julie's medical school tuition, insurance premiums, retirement savings. We'd been married 25 years, and she still thought about money the same way I thought about quality control. Systematically, logically, always planning for the worst-case scenario. But when she looked up at me, her face was calm. "We've been through worse," she said, walking over to hug me, box and all. "Remember when you came back from the Air Force and couldn't find work for 6 months? We made it then. We'll make it now. That's why I married her. 25 years and she still had my back." Julie looked up from her textbook. "Dad, does this mean I can't finish medical school?" "You're finishing medical school," I said. "Don't worry about the money. Your scholarships cover most of it, and we've got some savings set aside." What I didn't say was that I wasn't sure how long those savings would last. What I didn't say was that at 49, starting over in the job market wasn't going to be easy. What I didn't say was that Monday morning Dylan Walsh was about to learn the difference between disrupting a market and disrupting federal regulations. Monday morning, 0700 hours, old habits die hard. I made coffee and sat on the back deck watching the sunrise paint the sky orange and pink. The air was crisp, fall coming in strong. It was a beautiful day for a federal incident. At 8:15 my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. FAA headquarters. I let it ring. 0825. Another call, same number. They were getting nervous. 0833. Text from Dylan, Marcus. Emergency situation. FAA team is here. What's the inspection protocol? Emma's system isn't recognizing their credentials. Call immediately. I stared at the text for a long moment. The absolute audacity. He fires me, insults my career, calls my experience outdated, then wants technical support when his brave new world crashes into federal reality. I blocked his number. Here's what I knew was happening based on 24 years of federal inspections and regulatory protocol. Inspector Davis from the FAA and Major Wong from the Air Force Safety Office had arrived expecting to meet with me for a comprehensive audit of our F-35 quality systems. Instead, they found Emma Rodriguez, who couldn't produce certification documents, couldn't explain quality procedures, and couldn't legally authorize them to examine classified components. By 0900, SkyTech Aerospace was shut down pending federal investigation. Contracts suspended. Production halted. 300 jobs at risk. At 10:30, my phone rang. Different number this time. Marcus Reed speaking. "Mr. Reed, this is Inspector Davis, FAA Quality Assurance Division. I believe you used to work at SkyTech Aerospace Systems." "Used to? Yes, sir, until Friday afternoon. We've had a significant incident at their facility this morning. We understand you're familiar with their protocols. We need someone with appropriate certification to oversee the transition while we sort this out. Would you be available for immediate consultation? I might be able to clear my schedule." "Excellent. There's also another matter. Precision Aerospace Solutions has been awarded the regional quality oversight contract for this sector. They're looking for someone to head up their new facility compliance division. The position would involve oversight of multiple contractors in the region. Are you interested? Regional oversight, multiple facilities, government pension bridge, 35% pay increase over what SkyTech had been paying me. Yes, sir." "Very interested. Perfect. Can you start Wednesday?" Wednesday morning, I started my new job as Regional Quality Director. My first assignment was overseeing the federal investigation of SkyTech Aerospace. My second assignment was writing new quality protocols for defense contractors in the region. The protocols I wrote became the new federal standard. They emphasized the irreplaceable value of human expertise, the importance of proper certification procedures, and the dangers of replacing proven quality measures with untested technology. Sometimes the most important job isn't preventing failure. Sometimes it's being there when failure finally comes calling. And sometimes the system works exactly the way it's supposed to. Experience isn't just about knowing how things work. It's about understanding what happens when they don't and carrying the weight of every life that depends on getting it right. In a world obsessed with disruption and innovation, the most revolutionary act is sometimes just being the person who refuses to let proven standards die for the sake of a PowerPoint presentation.